The desert sun hung like a copper penny in the New Mexico sky, casting long shadows across the red dirt of Sandstone Valley Ranch. As twilight washed the landscape in purples and golds, the old wooden gate at the entrance swung open with a whine that carried on the evening breeze. Wyatt Pierce heard it from the tool shed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. He straightened from the saddle he was oiling, calloused hands pausing mid-motion. The ranch had been quiet for nearly 3 months, just him and the land speaking to each other in whispers only they understood. Since his grandfather's passing and his brother's move to Colorado, visitors had become as rare as rain. He preferred it that way, predictable, uncomplicated. But then he saw them. They appeared like mirages on the dusty path. A woman with auburn hair falling loose from what might have once been a neat bun. A small boy, maybe 6 or 7, with tear-streaked cheeks clutching her hand. And the strangest sight of all, a shaggy cream-colored pony with a faded red bow tied awkwardly around its neck. The woman's sundress was wrinkled, her eyes tired but alert. The boy's face was puffy from crying, though he was quiet now, perhaps too exhausted for more tears. The pony's coat was dull, its gait hesitant but steady. Wyatt set down his rag, wiping his hands against worn jeans before stepping into the yard. The evening light caught the copper in the woman's hair as she stopped several yards away, her shoulders square despite the weariness evident in every line of her body. "Looks like you 3 came a ways," Wyatt said, keeping his voice even, unhurried. The woman met his gaze but said nothing. The little boy pressed closer to her side, wide eyes taking in the ranch, the weathered buildings, the man standing before them with uncertainty. Wyatt's attention shifted to the pony. Its ribs showed slightly beneath its coat, and though it wasn't limping, there was a certain weariness to the animal that spoke of long miles. "That pony needs water," he said, gentler now. "And from the looks of it, so do you both." The woman swallowed, her throat working before she spoke. "We won't stay long. Just until morning, if that's all right." Her voice was soft but clear, like water over stones. The boy looked up at her, then back at Wyatt, his small hand tightening around hers. "Mama, is this where the horses live?" the boy whispered, loud enough for Wyatt to hear. The question hung in the air between them. Wyatt's face softened as he nodded toward the barn. "I've got 4 horses, a couple of goats, and an old cat who thinks she runs the place." He paused, then added, "Your pony's welcome to join them for the night." Relief flickered across the woman's face, though she remained guarded. "Thank you," she said simply. "I'm Wyatt," he offered, not moving closer, giving them space. "I'm Ellie," she replied after a moment. "This is Noah." The boy gave a tiny wave, half hidden behind his mother's leg. "And the pony?" Wyatt asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. For the first time, something like a smile touched the corner of Ellie's mouth. "Buttercup." Noah named him. "Buttercup's a fine name for a pony," Wyatt said seriously to the boy, who peeked out a little further. "Let's get him settled, shall we?" Wyatt led them toward the barn, walking slowly, aware of the way Noah kept close to his mother, of how Ellie's eyes continuously scanned their surroundings. The barn door slid open with a familiar creak, revealing stalls of fresh hay and the sweet scent of alfalfa. "Uncle Wyatt?" a voice called from the hayloft. "Is someone here?" A girl of about 12 appeared at the ladder, dark braids falling over her shoulders, freckles scattered across her nose. She froze when she saw the strangers, curiosity lighting her eyes. "This is my niece, Rosie," Wyatt explained. "She's staying with me for the summer." Rosie scrambled down the ladder with practiced ease. "You have a pony!" she exclaimed, eyes wide as she took in the sight of Buttercup with his faded bow. Noah stepped slightly forward, still holding his mother's hand. "His name is Buttercup," he offered quietly. "That's the best name ever," Rosie said with such conviction that Noah straightened a little, pride momentarily overtaking his shyness. Wyatt watched the interaction with quiet attention, noting how Ellie's stance remained alert, protective. She reminded him of the wild mustangs that sometimes passed through the valley, beautiful, wary, and carrying stories in their eyes that no one had yet translated. "Rosie, could you show Noah where we keep the brushes? Buttercup could use a good grooming." Wyatt
suggested, recognizing the way children often connected more easily than adults. Rosie nodded eagerly. "We've got special brushes just for ponies," she told Noah, though Wyatt knew there was no such thing. "Want to see?" Noah looked up at his mother, seeking permission. Ellie hesitated, then nodded. "Stay where I can see you," she said softly. As the children moved toward the tack room, still within view, Wyatt turned to Ellie. "Your boy's got gentle hands," he observed, as Noah carefully stroked Buttercup's nose. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "He's always loved animals," Ellie said, watching her son closely. "We couldn't. We didn't have space for pets before." Wyatt noted the careful correction, filing it away without comment. "Buttercup's got a good spirit," he said instead. "Tired, but good. Nothing some rest and food won't fix." "He's Noah's birthday present," Ellie said unexpectedly, the words seeming to surprise even her. "From his grandfather. Before we—" she trailed off, looking away. "Before you hit the road." Wyatt finished for her, no judgment in his tone. Ellie's eyes snapped back to his, wary again. "Yes." Wyatt nodded. "Well, you're welcome to the guest room tonight. It's small, but it's clean. Rosie and I were about to have dinner. Nothing fancy. Just stew and cornbread, but there's plenty." "We couldn't impose," Ellie began. "It's no imposition," Wyatt interrupted gently. "Food tastes better with company, my grandfather always said." Something in Ellie's expression shifted, a barely perceptible softening around her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "We'd appreciate that." Rosie and Noah returned, the boy looking lighter somehow, as if the simple act of caring for his pony had lifted some of the weight from his small shoulders. "Buttercup likes the soft brush best," Noah announced, some animation returning to his face. "Smart pony," Wyatt replied. "We'll get him settled with some feed and water, then head up to the house." They worked together, Wyatt showing Noah how to measure out the feed, while Ellie filled the water trough. Rosie chattered about the other animals, drawing occasional nods and even a quiet question from Noah. When Buttercup was settled in a clean stall, hay piled high for him to munch, they walked toward the main house. The ranch house stood weathered but proud against the darkening sky, 2 stories of stone and wood that had withstood decades of desert sun and winter wind. Solar panels glinted on the roof, and a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides, dotted with rocking chairs and potted cacti in various stages of bloom. "It was my grandparents' place," Wyatt explained as they climbed the steps. "Been in the family for 3 generations. Inside, the house was simple but comfortable. Wooden floors, sturdy furniture, photographs on the walls showing people with Wyatt's same steady eyes and strong jawline. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, unlit in the summer heat but ready for cooler nights. "Make yourselves at home," Wyatt said, gesturing to the couch. "Bathrooms down the hall if you want to freshen up." Ellie hesitated, then guided Noah toward the bathroom. "Let's wash up before dinner," she said softly. When they disappeared down the hall, Rosie tugged on Wyatt's sleeve. "Are they staying?" she whispered, eyes bright with excitement. "Just for tonight," Wyatt answered, though something in him questioned the certainty of those words. "The boy's sad," Rosie observed with the directness of youth. "And scared." Wyatt nodded, resting a hand on his niece's shoulder. "So let's give them a safe place to rest." In the kitchen, Wyatt stirred the stew simmering on the stove, while Rosie set the table for 4 instead of the usual 2. The cornbread was already cooling on the counter, golden and fragrant. When Ellie and Noah returned, both looked a little more put together. Noah's face was clean, his hair damp at the temples where he'd splashed water. Ellie had retied her hair into a neat bun, though strands still escaped to frame her face. "Smells amazing," she offered, her voice warmer now, less guarded. "Hope you're hungry," Wyatt replied, ladling stew into bowls. "Rosie and I always make too much." They ate at the kitchen table, the conversation flowing easier than Wyatt had expected. Rosie carried much of it, telling Noah about the horses and promising to show him the newborn goat kids in the morning. Noah gradually emerged from his shell, asking questions about the animals and occasionally glancing at his mother as if for reassurance. Ellie ate slowly, her attention divided between her son and their surroundings. Wyatt noticed how her eyes lingered on the exits, how she startled slightly at unexpected sounds from outside. He'd seen that same vigilance in soldiers returned from war, in wild animals newly rescued. He didn't ask. Not yet. After dinner, while Rosie showed Noah her collection of rocks and feathers gathered from around the ranch, Wyatt and Ellie washed dishes side by side at the sink. "Your niece is good with him," Ellie said, drying a bowl with careful hands. "Noah doesn't usually warm up to people so quickly." "Rosie has that gift," Wyatt agreed. "Gets it from her mother, my sister. She's good with strays of all kinds." Ellie's hands stilled on the dish towel. "Is that what we are? Strays?" Wyatt turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "I didn't mean it like that. Just meant Rosie sees people who need a friend. Always has." Ellie nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "I'm sorry. I'm a bit on edge." "No need to apologize," Wyatt said. "Long road tends to do that to a person." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence, the clink of plates and murmurs of the children's conversation, the only sounds in the warm kitchen. Later, as the desert night cooled the air, Wyatt showed them to the guest room. It was simple, a double bed with a patchwork quilt, a small dresser, and a window that faced the distant mountains. A trundle bed was pulled out for Noah, already made up with sheets printed with cowboys and horses. "Bathroom's just down the hall," Wyatt said. "If you need anything in the night, my room's at the end of the hallway. Rosie's is next to mine." Ellie stood in the center of the room, her hands clasped before her. "This is very kind of you," she said quietly. Wyatt shrugged. "It's nothing. Get some rest." Noah was already examining the quilt, tracing the patterns with a small finger. "Mama, look at the horses," he said, pointing to squares where fabric horses galloped in endless circles. "My grandmother made that," Wyatt told him. "Said every stitch was a story." Noah looked up at him with solemn eyes. "What stories?" "Well now," Wyatt said, crouching down to the boy's level. "That'd take all night to tell. But maybe tomorrow, if you're still here, we could start on a few." Ellie's breath caught, and when Wyatt glanced up at her, he saw something unreadable pass across her face. "Good night, Noah," Rosie said from the doorway. "Don't forget we're going to see the baby goats in the morning." Noah nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "Good night, Rosie." After Rosie headed to her room, Wyatt straightened and moved toward the door. "Sleep well," he said simply. Just as he was about to close the door, Ellie spoke. "Why are you helping us?" The question was direct, her voice steady, despite the vulnerability it revealed. Wyatt considered her for a long moment. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it," he said finally. "And because that pony still runs for him." He nodded toward Noah, who was carefully arranging his small backpack beside the trundle bed. "That means something." Before Ellie could respond, Wyatt closed the door gently and walked down the hallway, leaving her with words that would echo through the quiet of the desert night. Outside their window, the New Mexico stars emerged one by one, brilliant against the vast darkness. Inside, Noah fell asleep quickly, curled beneath the quilt of 100 stories. Ellie sat beside the window for a long time, watching the unfamiliar sky, listening to her son's steady breathing, and wondering if, after all this time running, they had somehow found their way to exactly where they needed to be. The next morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of the guest room. Noah woke first, his excitement about the baby goats and Buttercup overcoming any lingering weariness. Ellie watched him dress quickly, his movements more animated than they had been in weeks. "Can we go see Buttercup now, Mama?" he asked, bouncing slightly on his toes. Ellie smiled, the expression feeling almost foreign on her face. "Let's see if our hosts are awake first, honey." They found Wyatt in the kitchen, coffee already brewed, pancake batter mixing in a bowl. The scent of bacon lingered in the air. He looked up as they entered, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Morning," he said. "Hope you both slept well." "We did," Ellie replied, surprised to realize it was true. She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept through the night without waking at every sound. "Can I go see Buttercup?" Noah asked, unable to contain himself any longer. "After breakfast," Ellie began, but Wyatt cut in gently. "Rosie's already in the barn. Why don't you join her? I'll bring you both some pancakes when they're ready." Noah looked to his mother, hope shining in his eyes. Ellie hesitated, the instinct to keep him close, warring with the desire to see him happy. "Stay where Rosie can see you," she finally conceded, "and come straight back if she calls you." Noah was out the door in an instant, his small feet pattering across the porch and down the steps. Through the window, Ellie watched him run toward the barn, his shoulders relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in months. "He's got a good heart," Wyatt said, pouring batter onto the hot griddle. "Kids are resilient that way." Ellie took the cup of coffee he offered, warming her hands around it. "Sometimes too resilient. They adapt to things they should never have to." Wyatt glanced at her, his eyes understanding but not prying. True enough. They stood in companionable silence as the pancakes cooked, Ellie sipping her coffee, Wyatt expertly flipping the golden circles. "I should warn you," Wyatt said eventually, "once Rosie shows him those baby goats, he might never want to leave." Ellie stiffened slightly. "We can't stay," she said, the words automatic. Wyatt stacked pancakes onto plates, his movements unhurried. "Didn't say you had to. Just making an observation about goat kids. They're irresistible." The tension in Ellie's shoulders eased slightly. "Thank you for last night. For dinner, the room." "You're welcome to it for as long as you need," Wyatt said, his tone casual as he drizzled syrup over the pancakes. "I can't pay much," Ellie admitted, her pride warring with practicality. Wyatt looked at her directly then. "Wasn't asking for payment." "I can't accept charity," she countered, straightening her spine. "Not charity," he replied evenly, "just neighborliness. Though if you're set on contributing, I could use a hand around the place. Summer's busy season. Rosie helps, but there's always more to do than hands to do it." Ellie studied him, searching for hidden motives, for the catch that experience had taught her always existed. She found only openness in his steady gaze. "I could help," she said finally. "I'm good with my hands." "Quick learner." Wyatt nodded, as if they'd settled something important. "Let's take these out to the kids before they waste away from hunger." They walked to the barn together, plates balanced carefully in their hands. Inside, they found Noah and Rosie sitting cross-legged in the straw, 3 tiny goat kids prancing around them. Noah's face was transformed, a smile stretching from ear to ear as a black and white kid nibbled at his shirt. "They like the salt from your skin," Rosie was explaining. "That's why they lick you." "Breakfast delivery," Wyatt announced, setting the plates on a weathered wooden bench near the wall. Noah looked up, his eyes bright. "Mama, they have babies, and Buttercup already ate his breakfast." As if hearing his name, the pony whickered softly from his stall. Ellie noticed he looked better already, his coat a little brighter, his eyes more alert. "Amazing what a good night's rest can do," Wyatt commented, following her gaze. The children ate their pancakes perched on hay bales, the goat kids still dancing around their feet. Wyatt leaned against a post, his own plate balanced in one hand. "We've got a full day ahead," he said. "Need to check the fence line on the south pasture, move the horses to the east field, and there's a water trough that needs patching." "I can help with the water trough," Ellie offered. "I used to work maintenance at an apartment complex." Wyatt raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That'll come in handy. What about you, Noah? Want to be Rosie's assistant today?" Noah nodded eagerly, his mouth full of pancake. Rosie beamed. "We need to collect eggs and feed the chickens," she told him seriously. "And then check on Daisy's kittens. They opened their eyes yesterday." "Kittens, too?" Noah gasped, nearly dropping his fork. The day unfolded in a rhythm unfamiliar but somehow right. Ellie worked alongside Wyatt, her hands remembering skills long unused: how to patch metal, repair wood, gauge the tightness of a screw or bolt. They spoke little, but the silence was comfortable, broken occasionally by his quiet instructions or her brief questions. From a distance they could hear Noah's laughter as he and Rosie completed their chores, the sound carrying across the ranch like music rarely played. Ellie found herself pausing, sometimes just to listen, to embed the sound in her memory. By mid-afternoon, sweat dampened her shirt and dust coated her arms, but satisfaction hummed through her veins. The water trough no longer leaked, the fence section they'd repaired stood straight and strong, and 3 stalls had fresh bedding. "You're good at this," Wyatt commented, as they carried tools back to the shed. "Not everyone has the patience for repair work." "I like fixing things," Ellie admitted. "Seeing something broken become whole again." Wyatt nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Best feeling there is." They found the children in the garden, behind the house, where Rosie was showing Noah how to pull carrots without breaking the stems. A basket beside them already held a collection of squash, tomatoes, and green beans. "Mama, I picked vegetables," Noah called, holding up a carrot with dirt still clinging to its orange length. "That's wonderful, honey," Ellie replied, something catching in her throat at the pure joy on his face. "Rosie says we can have them for dinner," he continued excitedly, "and I can help wash them." "Sounds like you've been busy," Wyatt said, ruffling Rosie's hair affectionately. "We did all our chores," Rosie reported proudly. "And then some. Noah's really good with the chickens. They usually run from me, but they came right up to him." "Animals know good souls," Wyatt said, winking at Noah, who ducked his head, pleased but shy at the praise. That evening, they shared another meal at the kitchen table, this one featuring the vegetables from the garden, roasted with herbs and olive oil. Noah ate everything on his plate without prompting, even the green beans he usually avoided. "Can I go check on Buttercup before bed?" he asked when the dishes were cleared. "I'll take him," Rosie offered. "We need to give the animals their evening feed anyway." Ellie nodded her permission, and the children disappeared out the door, their voices fading as they crossed the yard to the barn. Alone with Wyatt in the kitchen, Ellie felt the weight of unspoken questions between them. She dried the last plate and set it carefully in the cupboard before turning to face him. "I should explain," she began. Wyatt shook his head. "You don't owe me any explanations." "Maybe not," Ellie agreed. "But I think I owe them to myself." Wyatt leaned against the counter, giving her his full attention without pressing. "Noah's father," she began, then stopped, searching for words. "He wasn't always. It started small. Controlling the money. Then, who I could see. Then, what I could wear, what I could say." Her hands twisted the dish towel unconsciously. "By the time I realized what was happening, I was too afraid to leave. He never hit Noah, but the things he said, the way he'd undermine him." She swallowed hard. No child should feel worthless in their own home. Wyatt didn't speak, didn't offer platitudes. He simply listened, his presence steady. "Noah's grandfather, my father. He gave Noah that pony for his birthday last month. It was too much, of course. We lived in a subdivision with strict HOA rules. But Dad knew. He knew we needed a reason. Ellie's voice caught. When Mark, Noah's father, saw the pony, he was furious. That night was bad. The next morning, while he was at work, Dad helped us pack, gave us some money, told us to go. She looked down at her hands, now still. Dad tied that bow around Buttercup's neck, said every birthday present needs a bow, even if it's a little late. We've been on the road for 3 weeks, staying in motels when we could afford it, sleeping in the car when we couldn't. I don't even know where we're going. Just away. Away is a good start, Wyatt said quietly. Sometimes that's enough. Ellie looked up at him, searching his face. Why are you helping us? Really? Wyatt was silent for a long moment. My sister, Rosie's mom, she was in a similar situation. Took her 3 tries to leave for good. His eyes darkened with memory. I wish someone had given her a safe place the first time. Might have saved her a lot of pain. Where is she now? Ellie asked softly. Colorado. Remarried. Happy. A small smile touched his lips. Rosie stays with me in the summers. Best part of my year. You're a good man, Wyatt Pierce, Ellie said, the words escaping before she could consider them. He shrugged, a hint of color touching his tanned cheeks. Just doing what anyone would. No, Ellie contradicted gently. Not what anyone would. What everyone should. Their eyes held for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then the screen door banged, and the children's voices filled the house again, breaking the spell. That night, after Noah was asleep in the trundle bed, his breathing deep and even, Ellie stood at the window again. The ranch lay peaceful under the moonlight, silver washing over the buildings and fence lines. In the distance, the mountains stood like sentinels, ancient and enduring. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Ellie felt something unfurl in her chest. Not quite hope, she wasn't ready for that yet, but possibility. The faintest hint that tomorrow might be better than yesterday. She thought of Wyatt's words from the night before. That pony still runs for him. It was true. Despite everything, Buttercup still brought joy to Noah. Despite everything, Noah could still laugh at baby goats and take pride in pulling carrots from the earth. Maybe, just maybe, they could both learn to run again. Not away this time, but towards something new. Morning dawned with a gentle touch over Sandstone Valley Ranch. The sun spilling gold across the weathered porch, where Ellie sat cradling a mug of coffee between her palms. The desert air carried the scent of sage and juniper, crisp and clean, in a way she'd forgotten air could be. From inside the house came the muffled sounds of Rosie and Noah chattering over breakfast, their voices intertwining like old friends rather than children who'd met only yesterday. The night had passed without nightmares for Noah, a small miracle Ellie didn't take lightly. For weeks he'd woken crying, confused about why they couldn't go home, why his father was so angry, why they had to keep moving. But last night, wrapped in that patchwork quilt, with horses galloping across its surface, he'd slept deeply, peacefully. The screen door creaked open behind her, and Wyatt stepped onto the porch, his own coffee in hand. He didn't speak right away, just settled into the rocking chair beside hers, the wood groaning softly beneath his weight. Beautiful morning, he finally said, voice low and easy. Ellie nodded, watching a roadrunner dart across the yard toward the fence line. It is. Kids are planning their day, Wyatt continued, amusement warming his tone. Seems there's a creek about a mile east that's perfect for tadpole catching, according to Rosie. Noah's never caught tadpoles, Ellie mused, surprised by the pang that accompanied this realization. How many simple childhood joys had her son missed, living in that pristine subdivision with its manicured lawns and strict rules? First time for everything, Wyatt replied. Then, after a pause, you're welcome to stay, you know, not just for today. Ellie's fingers tightened around her mug. I can't impose. Not imposing if you're invited. Wyatt interrupted gently. Place is too big for just me most of the year. And like I said, there's always work that needs doing. She turned to study his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the crinkles at the corners of his eyes, the quiet steadiness that seemed to radiate from him. In her experience, men who offered help always wanted something in return. But Wyatt's offer held no hidden edges, no expectations she could detect. Why? She asked. The question simple but weighted. Wyatt took a sip of his coffee before answering. Why not? Then, seeing her expression, he sighed. Look, I've got space. And from what I can see, you and Noah could use some time to catch your breath. Stay a week. Or a month. Long enough for that boy to learn how to catch tadpoles, and for that pony to remember what it feels like to run just for the joy of it. Ellie looked out across the ranch again, considering. In the distance, mountains rose purple against the sky, their permanence somehow reassuring. I don't have much money, she admitted. What I took won't last long. Money's just paper, Wyatt said with a shrug. Work is real. You've already proven you know how to work. Before Ellie could respond, the screen door burst open, and Noah tumbled out, his small face alight with excitement. Mama! Rosie says there are tadpoles in the creek, and they turn into frogs, and we can watch them grow legs. Behind him, Rosie appeared, her dark braids bouncing. Uncle Wyatt, can we take the picnic basket? I promised Noah we could have lunch by the creek. Wyatt's face softened as he looked at the children. Sounds like a fine plan to me. Just be back before the heat of the day. And wear your hat, Ellie added automatically, reaching out to smooth Noah's tousled hair. The sun's stronger here than what you're used to. Noah nodded solemnly. Then his face broke into a grin. Can Buttercup come too? Rosie says he could carry the basket. Ellie glanced at Wyatt, who nodded. Buttercup could use the exercise. And he's gentle enough for you to ride him part of the way if you'd like. Noah's eyes widened. Really? I've never ridden him before. No time like the present, Wyatt said, standing. Let's get him saddled up. As the children raced toward the kitchen to pack their lunch, Wyatt paused at the door, looking back at Ellie. Think about it, he said quietly. No rush on deciding. Ellie watched them go, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. It felt dangerously close to hope. The morning passed in a comfortable rhythm, with Ellie helping Wyatt repair a section of the chicken coop that had been damaged in the last windstorm. They worked well together, he noticed. She anticipated what tool he needed next, understood his brief instructions without lengthy explanations, and had a knack for seeing potential problems before they arose. You said you did maintenance work, he asked, as they secured a new hinge on the coop door. Ellie nodded, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. For 3 years, at Oakwood Apartments in Albuquerque, before Noah was born. She adjusted the door, testing its swing. I liked it. Solving problems, making things work again. You've got a good eye, Wyatt observed. Not everyone can see how things fit together. A small smile touched her lips. My dad taught me. He was always fixing something around our house. Said there wasn't a problem that couldn't be solved with the right tools and enough patience. Smart man, Wyatt said, handing her a bottle of water from the cooler they'd brought out. He is, Ellie agreed, accepting the bottle. He wanted to come with us, but his health isn't good. Heart problems. Her expression clouded. He gave us everything he could. Buttercup, his savings, his old truck. That's a father's love, Wyatt said simply. Ellie took a long drink of water, her throat working. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier. What about your parents? Are they still around? Wyatt shook his head. Mom passed when I was in high school. Cancer. Dad held on until about 5 years ago. Heart like your father. I'm sorry, Ellie said softly. Wyatt's smile was gentle, touched with old grief but not consumed by it. They were good people. Taught me and my sister right from wrong, how to work hard, how to be kind. Can't ask for much more than that from parents. They finished the chicken coop in companionable silence, then moved on to replacing worn boards on the porch steps. As they worked, Wyatt told stories about growing up on the ranch, about the time he and his sister tried to ride one of the goats, about his grandfather teaching him to track animals by starlight, about the summer a wild Mustang wandered onto their property and stayed for 3 days before disappearing back into the desert. Ellie found herself laughing more than she had in years, the sound rusty but genuine. In turn, she shared stories of her own childhood in northern New Mexico, where her father had worked as a forest ranger and taught her to identify every tree, flower, and bird in the mountains. "That's where Noah gets it," she said as they sat on the newly repaired steps, taking a break in the shade. "His love for animals, for being outside. Not from me, not really. From my dad." "Gifts pass through generations in strange ways," Wyatt observed. "My grandfather could gentle any horse, no matter how wild. Skipped right over my father, who couldn't tell a horse's mood to save his life, and landed on me." "Is that why you became a rancher?" Ellie asked, curious now about the path that had led him here. Wyatt leaned back on his elbows, looking out across the property. "Partly. Tried other things first. College for a while, then the army. Neither fit quite right." He shrugged. "Came back here when my father got sick. Figured I'd stay until he didn't need me anymore. By then, I'd remembered why I loved it. The rhythm of the days, the honesty of the work. No one to answer to but myself and the land." Something in his words resonated with Ellie, the desire for a life built on one's own terms, shaped by choice rather than fear. She thought of the apartment she'd left behind, with its beige walls and strict HOA rules, the neighbors who never quite met her eyes when Mark was around, the careful facade of normality she'd maintained for years, while something vital inside her slowly withered. "It's a good life," she said softly, almost to herself. Wyatt nodded. "It is. Not always an easy one, but a good one." They returned to work, the conversation flowing naturally between tasks and silence. By the time the midday heat became too intense to continue, they'd accomplished more than Ellie would have thought possible. Repaired steps, a mended chicken coop, a cleaned-out storage shed, and flower beds weeded and watered around the front of the house. "We make a good team," Wyatt said, as they put away the tools in the shed. Ellie smiled, surprised by how natural it felt. "We do?" As they walked back to the house, a cloud of dust in the distance caught their attention. A vehicle was approaching down the long drive that led to the ranch, a blue pickup truck that Wyatt clearly recognized. "That's Miguel," he explained, "neighbor from about 5 miles west. Probably bringing the hay I ordered last week." Ellie tensed automatically, her hand rising to smooth her hair. Check her appearance. Old habits ingrained by years of Mark's criticism whenever anyone visited. Wyatt noticed but didn't comment, simply slowed his pace slightly to give her time to compose herself. The truck pulled up near the barn, and a lean, older man with salt and pepper hair climbed out. His weathered face broke into a smile when he spotted Wyatt. "About time you showed up," he called. "Been sitting on this hay for days, thinking you'd come collect it." "Why drive 5 miles when I knew you'd bring it eventually?" Wyatt replied with a grin, striding forward to clasp the man's hand. Miguel laughed. Then his eyes fell on Ellie, curiosity evident. Wyatt performed the introduction simply. "Miguel, this is Ellie. She's staying at the ranch for a while, helping out. Ellie, Miguel Rivera. Best hay in 3 counties, and worst poker player west of the Mississippi." "Slander and lies," Miguel protested good-naturedly, extending his hand to Ellie. "Pleasure to meet you, Ellie." "Likewise," she replied, shaking his hand. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded, how the automatic fear of meeting someone new. What if they told Mark where she was? had receded to a manageable hum rather than a deafening roar. "Where's my goddaughter?" Miguel asked, looking around for Rosie. "Creek expedition with our other guest," Wyatt explained. "Ellie's son, Noah. They're tadpole hunting." Miguel nodded sagely. "Important business. Well, let's get this hay unloaded, and then you can tell me what other supplies you're running short on. Making a town run tomorrow." Ellie started to step back, to retreat to the house while the men worked, but Wyatt's voice stopped her. "Ellie, would you mind grabbing us some water from the kitchen? This won't take long with 3 pairs of hands." The simple inclusion, the assumption that she would help, that her contribution was valued, warmed something inside her. "Of course," she said, heading toward the house. By the time she returned with 3 glasses of ice water, the men had already unloaded several bales. She set the glasses on the tailgate and joined them, grabbing a bale by its twine and adding it to the growing stack in the barn. Miguel raised an eyebrow at Wyatt but said nothing, simply accepting the water with thanks when they paused for a break. His eyes, kind and perceptive, seemed to take in more than Ellie was comfortable revealing, but his manner remained respectful, undemanding. They finished unloading the hay, and Miguel declined Wyatt's invitation to stay for lunch, citing other deliveries. Before he left, he pressed a small paper bag into Ellie's hands. "Chili peppers from my garden," he explained. "Best in the county. Use them in your cooking, and Wyatt might never let you leave." With a wink and a wave, he was gone, the truck kicking up dust as it disappeared down the drive. Ellie stood holding the bag, oddly touched by the simple gift. "He seems nice," she ventured. Wyatt nodded. "Salt of the earth. Helped raise me after my mom died. He and his wife, Carmen, made sure I had a home-cooked meal at least once a week." A fond smile crossed his face. "They've got 4 daughters, all grown now, but no sons. Miguel used to say God gave him me to balance things out." "You're lucky," Ellie said softly, "to have people like that." "I am," Wyatt agreed. "Out here, neighbors matter. We're spread far apart, but we look out for each other." He paused, then added gently, "That could include you and Noah too, you know, if you stayed." Before Ellie could respond, the sound of childish laughter floated across the ranch. Rosie and Noah appeared around the side of the barn, their clothes damp, their faces glowing with excitement. Buttercup trotted beside them, the picnic basket still strapped to his back, though considerably lighter now. "Mama," Noah called, running toward her. "We caught 7 tadpoles and put them in a jar, and Rosie says if we keep them in the right kind of water, they'll grow legs and turn into frogs, and we can watch and then let them go back in the creek." Ellie knelt to meet him, her heart squeezing at the pure joy on his face. "That sounds amazing, honey. Did you remember to put air holes in the lid?" "Rosie showed me how," Noah confirmed, then launched into a detailed account of their morning, how Buttercup had carried him part of the way, how they'd eaten lunch with their feet in the cool water, how Rosie had taught him to make a whistle from a blade of grass. As he chattered, Ellie noticed something remarkable. Her son's eyes were clear, his shoulders relaxed, his voice animated. The shadows that had haunted him for months had receded, if only temporarily. Here, in this place, with these people, Noah was simply a child again, curious, enthusiastic, unburdened. "I see you two had quite an adventure," Wyatt commented, ruffling Noah's hair. Noah nodded eagerly. "Can we go again tomorrow? Rosie says there's a place further up the creek where we might find crawdads." "We'll see," Ellie said automatically, then caught herself. Why not? What was stopping them, really? "Actually, yes. If Rosie's willing to take you again, that would be fine." Noah's face lit up, and he turned to Rosie, who was already nodding. "I'll show you how to catch them without getting pinched," she promised. "First, though," Wyatt interjected, "those tadpoles need a proper home." "I think there's an old aquarium in the storage shed we cleaned out this morning. We could set it up on the back porch." The children's excitement at this suggestion was palpable, and soon they were all involved in the project. Wyatt and Noah retrieving the aquarium, Rosie gathering rocks and water plants from around the property, and Ellie cleaning years of dust from the glass until it sparkled. By late afternoon, the tadpole habitat was established on the porch, positioned where it would get morning sun but afternoon shade. Noah sat cross-legged before it, watching in fascination as the tiny creatures darted among the plants. "They're so small," he marveled. "But they're going to be whole frogs. That's the miracle of it," Wyatt said, crouching beside him. "Everything contains the seeds of what it will become. These little fellows already have all they need to be frogs. They just need time and the right conditions to grow into it." Noah considered this, his small face serious. Like Buttercup needed the right place to remember how to run? Wyatt's eyes met Ellie's over the boy's head, something profound passing between them. "Exactly like that," he said softly. That evening, after a dinner where Noah regaled them with more details of the creek expedition, Ellie helped Wyatt wash dishes while the children sat on the porch, keeping watch over their tadpoles as the desert sunset painted the sky in strokes of orange and pink. "I've been thinking about your offer," Ellie said as she dried a plate, her voice careful but determined. "About staying." Wyatt glanced at her, his hands stilling in the soapy water. "And?" "I'd like to try," she said. "Not forever, maybe not even for long, but for now, for a little while." She set the plate down, meeting his gaze directly. "Noah needs stability. He needs to feel safe. I haven't seen him this happy in longer than I can remember." Wyatt nodded, something like satisfaction warming his eyes. "And you? What do you need, Ellie?" The question caught her off guard. For so long her needs had been secondary, irrelevant in the face of survival. What did she need? Safety, yes. Work that mattered, that created rather than destroyed. But there was more. "I need to remember who I am," she said finally, the words emerging from some deep place inside her. "Who I was before. Before Mark. Before I started making myself smaller to avoid his anger. I need to find that person again." "She's still there," Wyatt said quietly. "I've caught glimpses of her today. In your laugh, in the way you tackle a problem, in how you look at your son." Ellie's breath caught, tears threatening unexpectedly. "I hope so. So you'll stay?" Wyatt confirmed, his tone carefully neutral despite the hope evident in his eyes. Ellie nodded. "We'll stay. For now. And I'll work. Real work, not token chores. I want to earn our keep." "Fair enough," Wyatt agreed. "Though having you both here is payment enough for me." He smiled then, a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Rosie's going to be over the moon. I think she's already planning a summer's worth of adventures for Noah." As if on cue, childish laughter drifted in from the porch, the sound mingling with the evening bird calls and the soft whicker of horses in the distant pasture. It was a sound that belonged here, Ellie thought, a sound that could heal, that could remind a person what joy felt like. "Thank you," she said simply. Wyatt shook his head. "No thanks needed. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" His eyes were serious now, intent. "Promise you won't run again without saying goodbye. If you decide this isn't right for you, if you need to move on, that's your choice. Just give us the chance to wish you well." The request was so reasonable, so respectful of her autonomy, that Ellie felt something crack open inside her chest. How long had it been since someone had acknowledged her right to make her own choices, to come and go as she pleased? "I promise," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion building behind it. Later, after the children were in bed, Ellie stood on the porch alone, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast New Mexico sky. Behind her, the house stood solid and welcoming, its windows glowing with warm light. Before her stretched the ranch, bathed in silver moonlight, a place of possibility, of second chances. For the first time in years, Ellie allowed herself to imagine a future not dictated by fear, a future where Noah grew strong and confident, where Buttercup ran for the sheer joy of running, where she herself might remember how to trust, how to hope, how to build rather than merely survive. It wouldn't be easy. There would be hard days, moments when the old fears returned, when the habits of self-protection reasserted themselves. But tonight, under this endless sky, with her son sleeping peacefully inside, Ellie chose to believe in possibility. She had run to save them both. Now, perhaps, it was time to learn how to stay. A month passed at Sandstone Valley Ranch, marked by the rhythm of sunrises and sunsets, of morning chores and evening meals shared around the weathered kitchen table. For Ellie, the days blended together in a way that felt not monotonous but steadying, each one building on the last, creating a foundation where once there had been only shifting sand. July heat shimmered across the ranch, turning the horizon wavy and indistinct in the afternoons. They adjusted their routines accordingly, rising earlier, taking refuge in the shade during the hottest hours, venturing out again as the sun began its descent. Noah's skin had darkened to a golden brown, his freckles multiplying across the bridge of his nose. He moved with a new confidence, his steps sure as he navigated the ranch paths, his voice clear and uninhibited when he called to Buttercup across the paddock. The tadpoles had, indeed, grown legs, their transformation fascinating the children daily. Noah and Rosie spent hours observing them, noting each change in meticulous journals Wyatt had unearthed from a bookshelf. Scientific observation, he'd called it, presenting each child with a magnifying glass as if bestowing precious tools of discovery. This morning, Ellie woke to the gentle sounds of the ranch awakening, roosters announcing dawn, horses nickering in anticipation of breakfast, the distant bark of Miguel's dogs carried on the breeze. She lay still for a moment, savoring the peace that now came with waking. There was no need to assess Mark's mood, to plan her words and actions to avoid his displeasure. Here, mornings brought only possibility. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Noah, who slept soundly in the bed beside hers. Over the weeks, they had gradually transformed the guest room, adding small touches that made it their own. Noah's drawings tacked to the wall, wildflowers in a mason jar on the dresser, books borrowed from Wyatt's extensive library stacked on the bedside table. Downstairs, the kitchen was empty, though the coffee maker burbled a welcome. Wyatt had already been up, then, likely out checking the livestock or starting early chores before the heat set in. Ellie poured herself a cup, added a splash of cream, and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air still held the night's coolness, fragrant with sage and the dampness of dew. Ellie settled into one of the rocking chairs, cradling her coffee as she watched the sun's first rays gild the edges of the distant mountains. This had become her ritual, these quiet moments before the day fully began, when she could think, reflect, and marvel at how far they had come. A movement near the barn caught her eye. Wyatt emerged, leading one of the horses, the young bay mare they'd been training together. Even from a distance, Ellie could see the quiet assurance in his movements, the gentle firmness with which he guided the animal. Something warmed in her chest at the sight, a feeling she wasn't quite ready to name. As if sensing her gaze, Wyatt looked up. He lifted a hand in greeting, then pointed toward the corral, an invitation. Ellie nodded, rising from her chair. She went back inside, just long enough to leave a note for Noah, with Wyatt at the corral, breakfast in the fridge, love you, before heading across the yard. The mare danced nervously as Ellie approached, still wary of strangers despite weeks of patient work. Wyatt stood at her head, one hand on the halter, the other stroking her neck in long, calming motions. "Morning," he said, his voice pitched low for the horse's benefit. "Sleep well?" "Better than I used to," Ellie replied, stopping a respectful distance away. "She seems anxious today." Wyatt nodded. "Thunder in the distance. They feel it before we do." Ellie glanced at the sky, which remained clear and blue. "Storm coming?" "By afternoon, probably." He patted the mare's neck. "Thought we might try something new with her today, if you're willing." "What did you have in mind?" "She needs to learn that not all humans are a threat." His eyes met Ellie's, something unspoken passing between them.
She listened with half an ear to the children's conversation, smiling at Noah's increasingly confident contributions to their make-believe scenario involving the blanket fort as a ship navigating treacherous waters. "I think we're making progress," Wyatt said quietly, setting his book aside. Ellie looked up, needle poised mid-stitch. "With what?" "Everything." His gesture encompassed the room, the children, the two of them. A month ago, Noah wouldn't have stayed in that fort during a storm like this. A month ago, you wouldn't have believed me if I told you how happy you'd both be here. Ellie considered this, acknowledging its truth. "A month is a long time when you're healing," she said softly. "And a blink when you're building something new," Wyatt countered. His eyes were serious now, intent on hers. "Ellie, I know we agreed you'd stay for now, and I respect that. But I want you to know that for now could be for always if you wanted it to be." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Ellie's hands stilled in her lap, the half-mended jeans forgotten. Outside, lightning cracked, illuminating the room in harsh white light before plunging it back into the softer glow of lamps. "Wyatt, she began, then stopped, uncertain what to say. How to express the complicated tangle of gratitude, fear, hope, and something deeper that his words evoked in her. "You don't have to answer," he said quickly. "Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not for months. I just wanted you to know that this place," he paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully, "that I would welcome you staying, permanently, both of you." Before Ellie could respond, a particularly violent crack of thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered once, twice, then went out. From the blanket fort came a small, frightened cry. "Mama?" "It's all right, honey," Ellie called, setting aside her mending and moving toward the fort. "Just a power outage. Remember how Rosie said you have flashlights?" A beam of light appeared from within the fort, followed by nervous giggles as the children switched on their emergency supplies. Wyatt rose and moved to a cabinet near the fireplace, retrieving several battery-powered lanterns. "We're well prepared for this," he assured them, setting lanterns around the room until a warm glow dispelled the darkness. "Happens a few times every summer." The momentary crisis averted, the children returned to their game, now enhanced by the dramatic lighting. Ellie resumed her seat on the couch, aware of Wyatt watching her, waiting for some response to his offer. "I don't know what to say," she admitted quietly, picking up her mending again to give her hands something to do. "You don't have to say anything," Wyatt replied, his voice gentle. "Just know the offer stands. No pressure, no expectations." Ellie nodded, grateful for his understanding. The truth was, the idea of staying permanently both thrilled and terrified her. Here, she and Noah had found safety, yes, but also joy, purpose, and a sense of belonging that had been missing from their lives for too long. Yet the specter of Mark still loomed in her mind, his potential anger if he found them, his legal rights as Noah's father, the fear that had become such a constant companion she wasn't sure how to live without it. "One day at a time," she said finally, meeting Wyatt's gaze. "That's all I can promise right now." His smile was understanding, patient. "One day is all any of us ever really has," he replied. "The rest is just hope." The storm raged on outside, but within the walls of the ranch house, surrounded by lantern light and the sound of children's laughter, Ellie felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the fear that had bound her for so long, a cautious embracing of possibility. One day at a time, she thought, and today at least, we are home. The power remained out through dinner, a simple meal of sandwiches and fruit eaten by lantern light, which the children declared the most adventure-y dinner ever. Afterward, with the storm still grumbling but beginning to move off to the east, they gathered on the porch to watch the lightning illuminate the distant mountains. Noah leaned against Ellie's side, his small body warm and trusting. "Mama," he whispered, "can Buttercup stay in the barn forever, even when we go back to our old house?" The innocent question pierced Ellie's heart. She looked down at her son's upturned face, at the worry creasing his brow. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, pulling him closer. "We're not going back to our old house. That part of our life is over." "Really?" Hope bloomed in Noah's eyes.
"We're staying here, with Rosie and Wyatt and the tadpoles and everything?" Ellie hesitated, aware of Wyatt and Rosie sitting nearby, pretending not to listen but undoubtedly catching every word. Would you like that? She asked carefully. To stay here longer? Noah nodded vigorously. Forever and ever, he declared with a child's certainty. This is where Buttercup can run. And where I can run, too. Across the porch, Wyatt's eyes met Ellie's in the dim lantern light. In them, she saw neither pressure nor expectation, only steady warmth, and perhaps a flicker of hope that matched the one unfurling in her own chest. Well then, she said, holding her son close as the last rumbles of thunder faded into the distance, I think we might just have to stay a while longer and see what happens next. Autumn painted the New Mexico landscape in subtle shifts of color, the cottonwoods along the creek flashing gold, the desert grasses taking on amber hues, the morning air carrying the first hint of crispness. 3 months had passed since Ellie and Noah had arrived at Sandstone Valley Ranch, a quarter of a year marked by healing, growth, and the gradual rebuilding of trust. The tadpoles had long since become frogs and been released back to the creek in a ceremony the children had planned for weeks, complete with handwritten certificates of graduation and a picnic to celebrate their successful metamorphosis. Noah had stood at the edge of the water, cupping a tiny frog in his palms, whispering words of encouragement before setting it free. Go be amazing, he'd said, his face solemn and joyful all at once. Remember where you came from. Ellie had caught Wyatt's eye then, something unspoken passing between them as they watched the children cheer the frog's return to the wild. There had been many such moments over the summer, quiet understandings, shared smiles, the gradual dissolution of the careful distance she had maintained. This morning, Ellie stood at the kitchen sink, washing breakfast dishes as she gazed out the window at the ranch yard. The first school bus of the year would arrive soon. After much discussion, she had enrolled Noah in the small rural school 8 miles away, the same one Rosie attended. It hadn't been an easy decision. Fear still whispered that any official record might lead Mark to them, but Wyatt had gently pointed out that Noah needed education, friends, a normal childhood. Besides, he'd said, this community protects its own. No one would tell a stranger anything about you or Noah without checking with me first. The thought still brought unexpected warmth to Ellie's chest. Their own. Somehow, in the span of a season, she and Noah had become part of this place. These people, the invisible barrier she had maintained, preparing always to leave, to run again if necessary, had gradually eroded, replaced by a tentative but growing sense of permanence. Mama! Noah's voice broke into her thoughts as he burst into the kitchen, backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Is it time yet? Rosie says the bus comes at exactly 7:45 and it's already 7:32. Ellie smiled, drying her hands on a dish towel. We have plenty of time, honey. Did you brush your teeth? Noah nodded vigorously. And I packed my lunch and put in an extra cookie for Rosie, and made sure my tadpole journal is in my backpack, because Mrs. Herrera might want to see it on the first day. Sounds like you're all set then, Ellie said, reaching out to straighten his collar. Where's Rosie? Saying goodbye to the horses, Noah replied. She says they get lonely when we're at school. Does she now? Wyatt's voice came from the doorway, warm with amusement. He was dressed for work in worn jeans and a chambray shirt, his hat already in hand. Funny, they seem just fine to me during summer break when you two are running all over the ranch. Noah giggled. That's different. We still see them every day then. Wyatt ruffled the boy's hair affectionately. Well, you can tell them all about your day when you get home. Speaking of which, he turned to Ellie. I need to drive into town for supplies this afternoon. Thought I might time it to pick the kids up after school. Save them the bus ride home. That work for you? Ellie nodded, touched as always by his thoughtfulness. That would be great. I'm sure they'd love it. Can we get ice cream? Noah asked hopefully. First day of school tradition, Wyatt confirmed with a solemn nod. Can't break tradition. From outside came Rosie's voice, calling for Noah. The bus, I can hear it coming down the road." Noah's eyes widened. "Gotta go!" He hesitated, then threw his arms around Ellie's waist in a quick, fierce hug. "Bye, Mama." "Have a wonderful day," she replied, bending to kiss the top of his head. "I love you." "Love you too." And then he was gone, the screen door banging behind him as he raced to join Rosie at the end of the driveway. Ellie moved to the window, watching as the two children stood side by side, backpacks on, lunch boxes in hand. They looked so ordinary, so right together, Rosie tall and confident, Noah smaller but standing straight, his posture echoing hers. When the yellow bus appeared around the bend, they both waved enthusiastically. "He'll be fine," Wyatt said softly, coming to stand beside her. "Rosie will look out for him." "I know," Ellie said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. The constant anxiety that had been her companion for so long had receded to a manageable hum rather than a deafening roar. "It's just his first day at a new school. I want it to be good for him." "It will be," Wyatt assured her. "Kids around here are decent. And Noah's got a way about him. People respond to his gentleness." They watched together as the children boarded the bus, finding seats by a window where they could wave one last time before the vehicle pulled away, carrying them toward new experiences, new friendships, new chapters in their young lives. Ellie felt a curious mixture of emotions as the bus disappeared from view: pride, hope, a touch of wistfulness, and underneath it all, a deep gratitude for how far they had come. 3 months ago, she wouldn't have believed Noah could board a school bus without fear, that she could watch him go without panic clawing at her throat. "You okay?" Wyatt asked, studying her face. She turned to him, a smile forming naturally. "Yes," she said simply. "I really am." Something in her tone made his expression soften. He reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was brief but electric, sending a current of awareness through her that had nothing to do with fear. "Good," he said, his voice low. Then, clearing his throat, he stepped back. "I should get to work. Miguel's bringing over that stallion today, the one I told you about from the rescue." "The abused one?" Ellie asked, remembering their conversation from last week. Wyatt nodded, his expression turning serious. "Previous owner used him for rodeo, treated him like a machine instead of a living creature. He's going to need a lot of patience." "If anyone can help him, it's you," Ellie said with complete confidence. A smile touched the corner of Wyatt's mouth. "Thought maybe you might want to help. When you've finished your work in the garden, you've got a good touch with the wary ones." The invitation warmed her. Over the summer, they had fallen into comfortable patterns, each with their own responsibilities around the ranch, but collaborating often, their skills complementing each other's. Ellie had discovered a talent for gentling nervous animals, for moving quietly and patiently until they accepted her presence as non-threatening. "I'd like that," she replied. "I'll come find you after lunch." With a nod and a smile that lingered in his eyes, Wyatt headed out, leaving Ellie alone in the suddenly quiet house. The silence felt different today, not empty, but expectant, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what this new phase would bring. Ellie moved through her morning tasks with practiced efficiency, finishing the dishes, starting a batch of bread dough to rise while she worked outside, gathering laundry for washing later. The routine was comforting, grounding. Here, she had found purpose beyond mere survival. Here, her work mattered, contributed to something larger than herself. In the garden, the summer vegetables were giving way to autumn crops, squash swelling on their vines, root vegetables hidden beneath the soil, herbs ready for drying and preserving for winter use. Ellie knelt in the rich earth, pulling weeds, harvesting what was ready, her mind pleasantly empty of all but the immediate task. How different from her former life, where anxiety had colored every moment, where she had always been performing, trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect neighbor, while something vital inside her withered. Here, dirt under her fingernails and sweat on her brow, she felt more authentic than she had in years. The sound of a truck coming up the drive pulled her from her thoughts. She straightened. Shading her eyes against the late morning sun, Miguel's familiar blue pickup appeared, moving slowly, towing a horse trailer. Wyatt emerged from the barn to meet him, and together they disappeared around the side of the building where the corral stood. Ellie finished her work in the garden, gathering the harvest in a wicker basket, tomatoes still, of red and yellow, a handful of late summer squash. Inside, she washed the vegetables and set them on the counter for later use. Then, checked the bread dough, which had risen beautifully in the warm kitchen. After punching it down and shaping it into loaves, she washed up and prepared a simple lunch, sandwiches, sliced apples, and cold tea, then headed out toward the corral, balancing the meal on a tray. As she approached, she heard the low murmur of voices, Wyatt and Miguel speaking softly, their tones serious. Then another sound caught her attention, the nervous snort of a horse, followed by the rapid thud of hooves against wood. The corral came into view, and Ellie stopped, taking in the scene. A magnificent black stallion stood in the far corner, head high, nostrils flared, every line of his body tense with fear and defiance. Even from a distance, she could see the marks of mistreatment, a network of old scars across his flanks, a wariness in his eyes that spoke of betrayed trust. Wyatt and Miguel stood outside the fence, careful to maintain distance. Neither man moved suddenly or spoke loudly, respecting the horse's fear while assessing his condition. "Brought lunch," Ellie called softly as she approached. Both men turned, and Wyatt's face brightened. "Perfect timing. We were just about to take a break." Miguel nodded a greeting, his weathered face creasing in a smile. Over the months, he had become a regular visitor to the ranch and a friend to Ellie, teaching her to make traditional New Mexican dishes, bringing books for Noah, treating her with a gentle respect that asked nothing in return. "The famous stallion, I see," Ellie said, setting the tray on a weathered picnic table near the corral. "Midnight," Miguel confirmed. "That's what his papers say, though I doubt he answers to it. Previous owner didn't use names much, just whips and spurs." Ellie's gaze returned to the horse, who remained vigilant in his corner, ears pricked toward them, muscles quivering beneath his glossy coat. "He's beautiful," she said softly. "And dangerous," Miguel added. "At least, that's what they told me when I got him from the rescue. Said he'd never be rideable again, that he'd attack anyone who came near him." "But you don't believe that," Ellie said, hearing the doubt in his voice. Miguel shrugged. "I believe he's hurt and scared and doesn't trust humans. Whether that can be healed." He glanced at Wyatt. "That's why I brought him here. If anyone can help him remember what trust feels like, it's this one." Wyatt accepted the sandwich. Ellie handed him with a grateful nod. "We'll give him time," he said simply. "Time and space and consistency. Same things that heal any broken spirit." His eyes met Ellie's as he spoke, and she felt the words resonate deep within her. Time and space and consistency. Wasn't that exactly what he had offered her and Noah? The freedom to heal at their own pace, the safety to rediscover themselves, the steady presence that asked for nothing but offered everything. They ate together, the conversation flowing easily around ranch matters, the children's first day of school, Miguel's daughter who was expecting her first child in the spring. All the while, Ellie was aware of the stallion watching them, his posture gradually relaxing as he realized no one was approaching him, no demands were being made. After lunch, Miguel departed with promises to return in a few days to check on Midnight's progress. Wyatt and Ellie remained at the corral, studying the stallion who now stood more calmly, though still alert. "What's your plan for him?" Ellie asked. Wyatt leaned against the fence, thoughtful. No plan, exactly. Just being with him, letting him set the pace. He glanced at her. Thought we might sit here for a while, just talking, letting him get used to our voices. If you've got time. I've got time, Ellie replied, settling beside him on a bench that offered a view of the corral without crowding the nervous horse. For the next hour they simply sat together, sometimes talking softly about inconsequential things, sometimes lapsing into comfortable silence. Midnight gradually began to explore his new surroundings, taking a few steps, then freezing, then venturing a little further. His ears remained trained on them, but the wild terror in his eyes had receded slightly. He's curious, Ellie observed. That's a good sign, isn't it? Wyatt nodded. Curiosity means he's not completely shut down, means there's still a part of him that wants to connect, even if he doesn't know it yet. How long do you think it will take? For him to trust again? Hard to say, could be weeks, could be months. Wyatt's gaze was warm from the sun, bell peppers in jewel tones steady on the horse. Some wounds go deeper than others, but I've never met a horse that couldn't heal if given the right environment. And the right people, Ellie added softly. Wyatt turned to her then, his expression open and unguarded. That too, he agreed. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of parallels, of shared understanding. Ellie had arrived at Sandstone Valley Ranch as wounded and wary as midnight, carrying scars both visible and hidden. And like the stallion, she had been given space to heal, time to remember what trust felt like. The realization both humbled and strengthened her. She was not the same woman who had stumbled onto this ranch 3 months ago, exhausted and afraid. That woman had been running from something. The person she was becoming was moving towards something, toward a future she was building by choice, not by fear. "Thank you," she said suddenly, the words emerging from someplace deep and true. Wyatt's brow furrowed slightly. "For what?" "For seeing me," Ellie replied simply. "The real me. Not just the scared version. For believing she was still in there somewhere." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "She always was," he said quietly. "Just needed someone to be patient while she found her way back." The moment stretched between them, weighted with things unsaid but increasingly understood. Then, from the corral, came a soft nickering sound. They both turned to see Midnight standing at the water trough, drinking cautiously, his posture slightly more relaxed. "Small victories," Wyatt murmured, a smile touching his lips. "Sometimes those are the most important kind," Ellie agreed. They remained together as the afternoon lengthened, shadows stretching across the corral. When it was time to pick up the children from school, they walked back to the house side by side, close but not quite touching, each aware of the other in a way that felt new, and yet somehow inevitable. The drive into town to collect Noah and Rosie was filled with their excited chatter about the first day. New friends made, subjects they would study, the teacher who had been so impressed with Noah's tadpole journal that she'd asked him to share it with the class tomorrow. "And I told Joey Martinez that I live on a ranch with horses and a pony that's all mine, and he didn't believe me," Noah reported, ice cream smeared at the corner of his mouth. "So I said he could come visit sometime and see for himself. Is that okay?" "Of course it is," Ellie assured him, catching Wyatt's smile in the rearview mirror. Another small step toward normalcy. Noah, inviting a friend over, making connections, putting down roots in this community. Back at the ranch, the evening unfolded in its familiar pattern. Chores completed together, dinner prepared and shared around the kitchen table, homework spread out while Ellie and Wyatt cleaned up. Then stories on the porch as the sunset painted the desert in fire, the children's voices rising and falling with their tales of school adventures until bedtime called them inside. Later, after Noah and Rosie were asleep, Ellie found herself drawn back to the porch, where Wyatt sat in his usual rocker, contemplating the star-strewn sky. She settled beside him, wrapping a light blanket around her shoulders against the autumn chill. "Good day?" he asked, his voice low in deference to the sleeping household. "The best kind," Ellie replied. "Ordinary in all the right ways." They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant call of a coyote, the soft whicker of horses in the pasture, the rustle of wind through the cottonwoods. "I've been thinking," Ellie said finally, her voice steady despite the quickening of her heart. "About staying, permanently, I mean." Wyatt turned to her, his face half illuminated by the porch light, half in shadow. "Have you now?" She nodded, gathering her courage. "Noah's happy here. Settled. And I found something here I didn't expect." "What's that?" Wyatt asked, though something in his eyes suggested he already knew. "Peace," Ellie said simply. "Not just the absence of fear, but something positive in its own right, a sense of belonging." She hesitated, then added softly, "A home." The word hung between them, fragile and powerful all at once. Wyatt didn't rush to fill the silence, giving the moment the weight it deserved. "I'd like to make it official," Ellie continued. "Find work in town maybe, contribute to household expenses, put Noah in school permanently." She took a deep breath. "Build a life here, if the offer still stands." Wyatt's face softened into a smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that had become dear to her. "The offer never went anywhere," he said. "It's been right here, waiting for you to be ready." Relief and something warmer flooded through Ellie. "I'm ready," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'm not saying it will be easy. Mark might try to find us eventually. And I still have moments when the old fears creep back in. But I don't want to let fear decide our future anymore." "Fear's a poor compass," Wyatt agreed. "Gets you running in circles instead of moving forward." He leaned slightly closer, his voice gentle. "And as for Mark, well, he'd find this community a tough nut to crack. We look after our own here." There it was again, that phrase that had come to mean so much. Our own. Belonging. Family chosen rather than merely inherited. "Thank you," Ellie said, the words inadequate for the depth of her gratitude, but all she had to offer in this moment. Wyatt shook his head slightly. "No thanks needed. Having you and Noah here, it's been like watching the ranch come alive again, like it was waiting for you both all along." The sentiment touched something deep in Ellie's heart. She thought of midnight in his corral, wary but curious, beginning the long journey back to trust. She thought of Noah, flourishing under the big New Mexico sky, his gentle spirit unfolding like a flower too long kept in shadow. She thought of herself gradually remembering how to hope, how to trust, how to build rather than merely survive. "I felt that way about Buttercup," she said after a moment, "when Noah's grandfather gave him to us. Like he was more than just a pony, he was a reason, a way forward when I couldn't see one for myself." "Sometimes we need something outside ourselves to show us the way," Wyatt observed. "Something that still runs despite everything." Ellie smiled at the echo of his words from that first night. Stay, if it still runs for him. How far they had come since then. How many small victories accumulated into this larger triumph, the choice to stay, to build, to belong. "Well," she said, her voice light but her meaning profound, "it seems Buttercup still runs. And so do we." Wyatt's hand found hers in the darkness, warm and calloused and steadying. She turned her palm up, interlacing their fingers in a gesture that felt both new and familiar, like coming home to a place she'd always been meant to find. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, witnessing this moment as they had witnessed countless others, of endings and beginnings, of courage found in unlikely places, of hearts opening despite past wounds. Below, the ranch slumbered peacefully, its buildings solid against the night, its fences marking not confinement but protection, its very soil promising renewal with each season's turn. And in the space between, on a porch rocking chair, built by hands long since returned to dust, Ellie leaned her head against Wyatt's shoulder and felt the future unfold before them, not as a desperate escape route, but as a path chosen with clear eyes and an open heart. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, a nervous stallion to gentle, children to raise, a life to build stone by careful stone. But tonight, under the vast New Mexico sky, Ellie knew with bone-deep certainty that they would face it together, no longer running from but moving toward healing, toward wholeness, toward the home they were creating with each brave choice to stay. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.